I'm open. Let's see how transparent we can be, and then we start.
Today we have two leaders from Audi Business Innovation, Andreas, the CEO, and Florian, what is your official title?
I have several titles, but I'm a unique lead for the global website platform.
Could you maybe take a minute to just introduce yourselves and give us a little insight into your career journey and how you got into the role you're in today?
So basically, because I'm the older one here, I'm Andy. So I'm the CEO of the ABI. So we call ourselves ABI, Audi Business Innovation. And basically, what I call myself is a kind of a software engineering dinosaur, because I studied computer science in the 90s, so 1990s. And from there on, I was dealing after, let's say, having the university behind me. I was dealing with automotive industries there because it's a big industry in Germany. So if you are in the automotive industry, at some point of time, you made it. This was the idea when I started really on the automotive industry part. But basically when I started, I recognized pretty early that software, in which I'm a computer scientist, so software has not a big role on the automotive side. So basically in the last 20 years, this changed so much. So starting from being just administrative efforts, so it's just a cost factor, which you are, coming now to a really active role in the way how, let's say, huge companies, corporates will move forward to. So the role of software has changed so much. And basically, so what I'm in my role here as a CEO is to really support that transformation that we are all in front of us, and to support this with engineering competences there. So basically, that's why I'm in. So I'm a really young computer scientist. I lead the ABI for now 1.5 years. And to the challenges that we're facing, I will come to that really in a minute when we discuss that. But basically, that's more or less what I would bring in. So people, technique, software, and to combine that in a very small company, which we are.
Yeah, I'm Flo. I'm in IT since 20 years, and I skipped university. So from school, I went straight to a company where I learned a lot of infrastructure stuff like storage network, everything that you need in a data center, actually everything besides software, I would say, or maybe the operating system. And I worked for the first years in aviation. In Germany, we had global customers. And then I went to a big tech firm where I was in consulting. And then I joined ABI about 8 years ago and support ABI and our mothership Audi in digital topics.
So in terms of ABI, what is part of the origin story on that, even as a structure? I think, Andreas, listening to your intro, I hear a lot of folks say that, innovation becomes synonymous with software development and this kind of role that it's playing in kind of the entirety of the consumer kind of journey and life cycle. But in terms of this structure, what is the mandate for ABI and how did it come about?
So basically, maybe if you ask about, let's say, why ABI was somehow founded, if this is really the question, and really the rationale behind that. The rationale behind having a kind of a company as ABI, and we are up to 250 people, so it's not really a big one, it's more a mid-sized company, was in 2013 when we started that there was a kind of a top management decision. It was really a board decision that people were facing more or less the competitor side. So we see that there are a couple of rising stars there. Tesla was at that point of time pretty small, to be quite honest, but on the horizon we saw that there is something coming which develops. And when they looked into the inside view and looked into the capabilities which they currently have inside the company, it was pretty obvious that there's a big missing piece there. And the big missing piece is that they do not own, let's say, software competencies, software engineering competencies. And in addition to that, and this was the outcome of the last couple of years, product development competencies. So how to really develop a product, not just a kind of a project or anything like that, but a product which is coming to the face of the customers there. And the finding was at that point of time that the capability is not there within the company, or at least it is too big that a small growing plant will be somehow supported in order to get to grow that. And that's why they made a kind of a spin-off. Spin-off is in terms of a new company, which a very specific goal. And this very specific goal was to really focus on digital products and to develop digital products outside the big company, to really let this kind of thinking evolve and to bring at the end of the day innovation back to the big mothership that Flo was calling it. So we have an engineering capability in Ingolstadt, so on Audi side, huge manufacturer capabilities. So we know how to build cars, but we have no idea how to build a service around the car. We have no idea how to deal with the customer, really focusing or dealing with software products. And that's why we said we need such a unit, a small unit, which helps us to develop innovation there. And when we started, it was a very clear focus on having mobility services. So more or less to give the customers the ability to really test vehicles up to 2 years. So from 1 hour to up to 2 years in order to get used to electric mobility. So BEV cars are where the big keyword there. And from that onwards, we started building on mobility services, different other services as well. So that's why we are founded now, at least 10 years ago. We have a couple of products running, and we have a couple of, let's say, capabilities hosted inside Abi, and now we start to scale into the company. And it's the right time to do that because the transformation, it is accelerating, it's getting faster and faster, and we have to deal with these kind of obstacles, how to deal with it and how to overcome that. That's why we are here.
So I appreciate that. You know, you often hear these kind of monikers, and in some cases I hear ones that all begin with the letter P, like first companies start with projects. Then they start to think in terms of products. Then you have a portfolio of products you have to manage. And then under that are these large platforms. Some are commercial, some are open source, some are things you have to build. Is that kind of part of the consciousness that you guys are seeing to how the structures evolve?
So it's basically exactly what you are mentioning there. So the same procedure we have been suffered to, so to speak, as well. So basically, there is a kind of a thing we have to somehow deliver a portfolio, product portfolio. It has to be somehow steered. You have to rethink, but you have to find, let's say, a clever way in order to let also innovation be part of such a process. You just can't plan for it.
Yeah, I think jumping into that part, and I know Flo, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. So when I think about companies as large, right, as the VW Group or other firms that we work with that are in 6 global markets with more than 10 separate full brands, right? And you think about the value of the assets you're building as this shareable digital infrastructure or scaffolding. But in order to really make it achieve the business goal, there has to be some kind of strong feedback loop within those markets or within those brands that are going to tailor, right, really build this kind of award-winning experience or this engaging experience that gets to some business result. And when I think about that, I think less about the structures of the teams, but more their interactions with, you know, a well-structured interaction with sales or marketing or direct feedback from the dealer network or consumers. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what are the core routines that help your team get the correct alignment inside the building, maybe to business goals, but then this customer validation, which can often seem like an elusive thing, right, to get when you're building a product.
So now you touch exactly the right point, which we, from an Abi perspective, are always, let's say, focusing on, or let's say we always place it as a kind of a message that we are bringing. Because then we have to look into the structure of the overall company. You mentioned that we have currently 12 different brands. So we have the volume brands like Volkswagen, obviously, or we have Seat, or this sort of brands which they deliver a lot of cars, and then we have the so-called premium cars. So there is Bentley, Ducati, Audi, Porsche. So these are the more premium ones. And what we experienced that there is a different demand from the customer perspective on those different brands and also what they have to deliver in terms of services around that. And the overall structure from the Volkswagen Group, so the 12 brands is that we have a clear separation between two parties. The first one is customer-focused services are sitting in the brands. And I come to that later, what it means in terms of how to build these things, because then the customer comes in place, validation, ideation, these sort of things. And there is a big portion which we call the commodity part. So common services, which are separated and which should be used by the different brands. And there was a big company founded 2 or 3 years ago. We call it the Carriot. It's really our software, big company with more than 10,000 employees, which are in the plan, working in that bigger company, which helps us to really go into the vehicle. So the relation between customer-facing services, so focus to the brand, and the backend system, which is dealing with the car itself, is established. And now we as Audi, we can focus now on the premium customers, because Audi is a premium brand. And now what you're saying is, in terms of how to influence, let's say, our big mothership, is the way how to start and how to implement products and services. And we think always from the customer perspective. This is our, let's say, step number one, and always the baseline. Think about the customer, think about the experience which the customer should perceive, and then we move from that portion onwards. In the past, we thought about the car. In the past, we thought we know what the customer might need. And now we change completely the wheel. So now the customer is sitting, let's say, in the driver's seat. We are asking him. So the complete product development process is now in place based on customer feedback. And this is now the new element which is in place, which is not 100% fulfilled, to be quite honest. We have still, let's say, the old, we call them motorheads, guys who think they know what the customer needs. But basically, it's a process which has started, and the change is ongoing. And a company like Audi is in charge of pushing the change, is in charge of whatever we do. We always ask the customer what he thinks, and we eat our own dog food. So we try it on ourselves, and we focus on that. And this is a big mindset change, which is somehow related to Audi. And when they talk about Audi, they know these guys are focusing on customers and services for customers. And this is the big mindset change that we are currently focusing on.
That is a huge kind of mindset change. And it kind of brings up something like, when you're building a car, I've heard that can be a 5 to 7 year product development, right, journey to launch an entirely new model of a vehicle or rethink of an existing platform. It's also a highly regulated industry, right? I mean, again, we kind of hear about these tensions between AI and self-driving cars and safety, and what happens when it gets into an accident. So it adds kind of this, how do you innovate within regulatory compliant or within the type of manufacturing that has such a long kind of lead time? So when you guys think about experiments, I'm just curious kind of your thoughts on like things that are fast and can be done, right? Things that, kind of have regulatory compliance issues, or things that have to be fit into an existing 5-year platform development program. Can you talk a little bit about how do you manage those different kind of modes and velocities of working?
Yeah, so basically what you're referring to is the way how we developed cars in the past. So there was really this 5 to 7. It was in our case more 7 to 9 years period. Which you had to anticipate at least 72 months in advance of which kind of function you require from those guys. This is from the innovative perspective and from the changing perspective a disaster, to be quite honest, that's clear. So the whole architecture of the car changed in order to fulfill the requirements of having date changes, of having update possibilities in the car. And that's why we have different processes running right now. So we have one process which is more or less a little bit strictly related. And this, when it comes to hardware, when it comes to really sensors in the car, then we have to be very, very clear upfront which kind of, let's say, functions we need from such a hardware piece. The good thing is that the hardware is getting more and more flexible. So the software piece is also in the hardware side, which allows us really to somehow change these things, and we use that pretty often, pretty heavily. And the second piece is that the overall software architecture in the car changed a lot. So it is the possibility to updates is given in the future cars, in the future platforms, because they are thought from the beginning of how to handle that. And this is a complete different, let's say, approach. So this is one piece which changed a lot, the development process. The second piece, and you mentioned very clearly, the regulations, so the legal requirements, they exist. We know that. We have to fulfill that. So in terms of getting automated processes there, getting audits there, having this all set up properly is, in my opinion, a mandatory piece. We can't really take this apart. It is kind of our development process, how to fulfill that. But we know that we need a lot of automation, we need a lot of version control, we need a lot of change capabilities in the cars to fulfill future needs there. So it is a stretch thing. So it is not something which you have a very clear let's say view on that, because we have to really develop it, and we have to outline and also start with our authorities how to overcome these things. Because good thing is, people also in authorities understand that there is a need of change. So engineering thinking will also change there, and it has to change also the legal side. Otherwise, nothing will really happen or will be really innovative in future if we have people who have, sorry to say, save your ass mentality coming along with them. If this is the case, if there is not really courage and really the will to do things differently, then nothing will change. So we need these people. We need to some extent always challenge their opinion, and then we have to really start changing processes there. This is the only thing which you can overcome.
Yeah, when you said the industry is regulated, I would say the cars are regulated, but not the users. And that's maybe the important part, because as Andreas said, like all the cars and everything around is super highly restricted. And also, of course, the companies who are building the cars have the mindset, we need to like have this 100% waterproof, like no risk attached. We don't want to get into any risk that might come on the horizon. But the important part is, how can we find ways to still innovate without be part of the regulation? And we are not on the side in the cars, not that much. We can try to work around. And maybe if you compare the industries like the food delivery services, I mean, in like restaurants, at least in Germany, are regulated about like hygienic concepts and like what they need to do, what kind of facilities they need to provide for their guests. And the restaurant delivery services for food, I think they're kind of regulated, but of course, like this just adds a new universe to restaurants, like just on top. And that's maybe just some inspiration on how to work with these kind of regulations. So don't be in the regulated zone, try to be around it, or try to extend like the service into other dimensions that are not that much regulated. And I think that's a sweet spot. And that might also like the consequences could be that other users are now part of your portfolio. Like it's not like the guy who bought the car or who wants to buy the car. Maybe it's other people, I don't know who. Maybe it's people who build a service around whatever this might be. Could be anything. Yeah, but this is something that also changes to perspective, because it's not like the one who's buying the car. It's like other people, other needs that need to be satisfied. And then this is what Andreas said, we need to focus on the user, which might not be the original style customer who's buying a car once every 3 years for 80,000 euro.
Yeah, and I think about these kind of three horizons of thinking where it's all where we think the industry is going to be and where it's going to end up. There's this kind of reality everyone's dealing with, which, you know, this post-COVID reality of changing in consumer behaviors. And then I think about these kind of middle path solutions, right? So if there's this future end game where as a teenager, I'm playing video games, driving an Audi VW brand car, designing it, and then I may one day want to have that actual car produced, right? I'm developing a brand relationship through digital channels, dreaming about, thinking about it. Then I'm getting into a buyer experience, but I'm still going to use a traditional model of a dealership. And so how do we enable that relationship and create this customer experience that you used to only own a certain part of it, right? And then these other partner channels owned their piece, which really could affect your brand if their experience wasn't done well. It sounds like there could even be this other dimension where what does even luxury mean anymore? You know, it means environmental responsibility, and high-end technology doesn't mean gold-plated shifter knobs or something like that, right? And that's many different things to kind of balance all at the same time. So in terms of maybe you know, thinking through the kind of customer experience, and it just does bring to mind, you know, this kind of reality we're all living through right now of the impact of COVID on shutting, you know, restaurants and things down. I think about high-end restaurants around where I live that would have never delivered food. It would have only been an in-restaurant experience that stayed afloat because they developed a way to open that channel. And then now, do you think they're going to give that revenue up? Probably not. Now the good news is you don't have to go out, get dressed up to go out to eat. So what, if anything, if we just kind of maybe shift the conversation to the last couple of years have been, you know, pretty unique outliers in terms of all of our career experience. What is that? Has that been helpful in any certain ways in terms of, you know, how you kind of manage up to these other executives that are thinking on these more traditional timelines to understand that the future could be now? There's been fast forwards, and even in terms of what does it mean to be the type of employer that wants to attract and retain and develop, you know, the high end, the kind of knowledge workers necessary to execute on these strategies.
So maybe basically what you're saying is right, in my opinion. So what happened in the last 2 years changed so much in terms of the demand which is coming to us as a company and to us as a manufacturer and to us as really people who want to influence and want to have impact on the daily life of people. So in my opinion, that's really a big change there. So for instance, if you think about, let's say, getting safe from A to B, what is then the environment which you to somehow expect from a car? What is the time which you or how can you utilize the time between traveling from A to B in a, let's say, in terms of the people, what they need, what they really have in mind, what they really like, what they really want to do, and how to really support that. That changed so much. The people and the behavior of people is really changing, and it's changing permanently, and it has a different focus, in my opinion, on the way how we should deliver services, how we should deliver products, and how luxury at the end is to be defined. To be quite honest, that's really key, in my opinion, in order to really ask the customer and anticipate what he's really thinking of having that. So and basically what we saw from their behavior currently is that there is and the trend is now really accelerated, is that people are searching for information on the internet or on other channels. So they drive through the customer journey much faster as it was in the past. And when you said if you have a kind of a lack of a good user experience in every touch point, then you lose, in my opinion. And this means the collaboration between parties involved there. And in our case, so we are in the automotive industry, we have dealers, we have the internet, we have different kind of customers, we have different demands, and they have to fulfill the needs and the wishes from the end customer. And the experience has to really follow that. And at the end, and this is how the whole industry of automotive will move into the future, is that we are extending our portfolio from being just a manufacturer to having real impact, reasonable impact on life. So the lifetime of the car is important now. How to help during getting a better life, gaining more time. And this is the service which we expand. So the current traditional market is designing a car, engineering it, selling it. Full stop. Dealer done. Then a little bit after sales. And now we move into a fully different situation. And COVID pushed that.
So, you know, this is interesting because a lot pre-COVID, I was talking to a lot of just different industry brands, but same kind of scale of operations as ABI, that was saying things like, we have to get beyond the hotel room to the travel experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're saying, like we have to get beyond the car to kind of mobility services or this kind of quality of life issues. And this concept of helping drive that journey, right, to this new set of aspirational goals, which will have a new organizational structure, to your point, new routines. Again, if we kind of then, you know, when I think we were talking, you know, a little bit earlier, just around how, so these new kind of mechanics happening in these industries are, and this new thinking on the goal of the brand, now have to be reflected inside the structure of the organization. And in many organizations that have, to your point, these traditional not kind of mindsets that IT is a cost center. Now it's IT is driving IP and new organizational capabilities and routines that keep our voice of the customer true, right? And so when you think about some of these roles that are not always well understood by folks who grew up in the manufacturing era, right, of building a global business, now we're trying to reorient to this much more ethereal, you know, software, essentially digital era. What are some of the kind of definitions you feel for some of these key jobs that really help set them up for success? So, and again, not to kind of put you guys on the spot here, but I'm trying to get into some of this kind of tactical advice here on, you know, what's the difference in your guys' opinion between a really good project manager and someone who's managing a portfolio, or someone who's coming in to shepherd a digital business case? How do you guys kind of orient the responsibilities and key activities around the roles that really enable, like the key people and roles that enable your teams to function?
I would say, like some years back, maybe when the world was not that complex, it was all about like the best engineer, the best planning, like someone who gained a lot of experience on a subject. And then this guy or this person, maybe a woman, whoever, could lead a team by setting requirements. But when it now comes to a complex world, I think it's not about the person with the most experience. It's about interacting teams that can achieve great things. And I think what helps a lot is when they can identify with the product and identify with the service. Maybe if they're the users of this service. So our company, we are a young company, and we are in the middle of Munich in Germany, and most of us don't have cars. And maybe I would say, like, most of us never went to an Audi dealership to buy a car for different reasons. Maybe because we don't want to spend the money. Maybe we don't need a car. I personally don't need a car. I need it sometime, so I rent it, but I don't own one. So I drive a bike or I drive the public transport. So when it now comes to other products where we can identify more with ourselves and our own needs and desires, and we can interact as teams, maybe we feel also closer to these kind of users. And that's for my, like these two things, like using the scaled brains of the teams together, and try to give them an environment where they can play around and be creative, and then let them experiment, give them some freedom. Then this is something that could bring great products, but also, of course, great failures. But failures are also important because we want to move into a direction. As we said, I mean, like building cars is something we know, but we don't know the other things. So we need to learn. And like the cars we have now, they're super evolutionary. I mean, the cars that we had 20 years ago were basically the same cars that we have right now. We have a bit more electronics in it, but they had 4 wheels, they had a steering wheel, they had seats in the direction of travel. They had 2 headlights in front. Like the cars itself, they didn't really change for different reasons. So now we are changing a lot, and that's why we need to fail a lot and learn. And that's where teams come in place. And yeah, I think that we might take on that question.
So, but basically, if I can add that Flo, because one of the questions, as I understood, was how to implement and empower people in their roles. And you mentioned beforehand project managers. In my opinion, project managers are, let's say, a relict of the past, because we always discuss about a project. A project has a business case, a project has a goal here and there, and then it's over. Then we move into operations, and then it's done. So that's more or less what we have in the kind of a project managers. And if we do the project well, in terms of delivering, meaning time-wise, budget-wise, quality, so nothing fails. And then it was a good job from a project manager point of view. When you talk about a portfolio manager and a product manager, it changed completely, in my opinion, because then immediately the customer value comes in place. So the criteria of how successful is a product is completely different when you compare it to how successful is a project. And that we have the new roles now in place, and they replaced entirely project managers. We have now service owners, we have product owners, we have product managers. And with these sort of things up to the portfolio level, where they are in charge of delivering a product portfolio which satisfies customers. And that's the difference between what we had in the past and what we have now. And that's why, in my opinion, it's the right way and to really implement those kind of roles. But now is my big but there. So that there is a condition coming along with that. So if you go to a corporate view, it does not mean just repainting the role. So having the same people. You have been in the past a project manager, now you are a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
Never work. Never. So it's a complete mindset change. You can't replace department managers and now you are a product owner. You will completely fail. They are administrators. They do administrative tasks, and now you have to do a creative task. So you have to empower people, and you have to find the right people, and you have to replace others. Otherwise, we will fail. And this is, in my opinion, very from the deepest heart. If it goes out, let's say, to other, let's say, when we exchange, when we discuss it, look to the skills of your people and challenge them to ask customers to really follow the path which Flo anticipated. So to really live your own processes there, to live your product, to experience your product, and not just to sit there in whatever box and just look from the inside out. You have to also look from the outside in. So in my perspective, new roles, new skills, having the right people there, giving them the ability to change things, and not just to focus on business cases, because this can kill innovation pretty soon. So you have to find a kind of a bottom line which allows people not discussing about business cases, but discussing about ideas. Then you can be successful. Otherwise, you will fail.
You know, as they say, Andres, like great products are never done, right? And I think to your point, if I were to layer, so when I have these conversations and I hear a lot of kind of industry, I hear external in these conversations a lot of kind of industry buzzwords that are trying to shape this narrative where you're describing an omni-channel customer experience, right? It has online components, it has multi-channel online components, web, mobile, in-car experience. It has offline, the dealership, the service center. I guess it would be my assumption that when I think about that role of product owner, I think one of the advantages certain brands have, I think that you guys have, is the accessibility of, to your point, you're either someone that has the product, has experienced the journey. You are essentially, you have the implicit ability to replicate every journey of the customer.
Correct.
And have the ability to embed within each of those contexts locally. You don't have to fly your team around the world to understand what the experience is like at a particular dealer. Although, again, as I think we talked about with some global brands within different markets, there needs to be the ability to kind of to tailor that. So, so maybe, you know, I think about a couple different things then. So when I think about the stage, right, of a company in its journey, as you as leaders are being asked to lead or kind of, you know, accelerate these activities within companies, there's this kind of implicit conversation we all have with ourselves is like, what's the maturity index that I'm going into? Right? How well functioning? Because part of that, before I can get to the results, I think to your point, you've got to kind of assess the departments, the roles, right? Your kind of, where do you start this journey? How do you get to kind of where you go there? You know, when I think about just the scars on any kind of leaders like that back, what are the things that come to mind for you guys in terms of setting up these roles for success that have to lead these journeys? In terms of like making this as a functional unit, be able to work well with its parent or the finance department, right? Having a good partner that understands that you have to fund innovation differently than you do projects per se. What are some of the things that stand out to you guys? And if you're really serious as a business, and especially a large scale business, let's say, not a startup, right? One with existing brand, which could be damaged if you don't do these things correctly, has multiple markets. What are the things that resonate with you guys that are worth sharing on how to begin this journey or how to assess yourself as a leader for the journey?
So basically, and you mentioned it pretty clear. When we started on Abi's side, we have been, let's say, always under the radar. A very small company. We did some innovations here and there. It was not really important, to be quite honest. So it was something which we has kind of a lab. Let's try it out, how far it goes. This will not be successful in terms of scaling, in terms of going beyond pilots and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, what we really need is really the sense of urgency. So if we as a company could have impact on our mastership, so we are 250, Audi has 70,000 employees. So see the relation, it's really huge. You need an important topic which really give chances to the future. If you don't deliver, it is really a negative impact. So there is importance of what you do. And in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges that, let's say, companies like we face is to get the backing from our senior management, at least from one senior manager. So in our case, it's the board. The board, there's a sense of urgency where we need definitely delivery, where we need results, where we need progress. We have no idea how to get that. And now let's find a partner who is able to do that. And trust them. Trust is so important. Trust them that they will deliver. They do it in their own way. It is far apart from how we used to work on Audi side. So give them the ability to have freedom there. Give them the ability to make decisions, but also to support them. And this was one of the critical pieces when we go into the scaling part, where we are so in our journey. We are now sitting exactly in the way that we have now the sense of urgency, a big sense of urgency. Everybody knows that this is coming. It is fully aligned within the corporate strategy. So there is really a responsibility. There is responsibility and trust. So both. And we found mentors. We found them. And this is, in my opinion, one of the success factors in order to have the ability to grow and to really have impact. Because, and now we come to the part, we all know that what we do, we always need the connection to the car. And if you are small, and if you are just doing innovations, nobody will respect if you have any requirements towards the car. You will always be deprioritized. Nothing will happen. So we are just software guys. And now when we talk about let's having services around the car, you have to interact with the car. This is key. And then you got really the possibility or the task or both that you are allowed to talk to these guys on eye level with trust. And this is, in my opinion, the success that we, or let's say the preliminary requirement that you have to get implemented. Otherwise, you will fail influencing your mothership.
I think that's a super interesting question because it depends a lot on the frame condition. And what Andreas said, I mean, I fully signed that. But I would say, like some years back when I entered this system, this kind of organization, I mean, of course, my naive mindset said, "Hey, you need to understand it's super easy to do things differently." But we are hitting a system. They're successful since ages with their business model, with their approach. So now, why should they trust you? Of course. And this is like like expectation management. Like accept the reality. The reality is no one trusts you. No one asks you like what is your thing, because they know like the established system. They know how to do it. And if they did not accept that they need to change, it's gonna take ages to change, or they need some really hard disruption from the outside. And I mean, in automotive, even if we have like something like a crisis or pandemic or whatever, we still have like crazy sales figures. I mean, there is maybe not a real crisis. Maybe like depends on what you mean, what you define. But this is something that's important. So I would say accept the reality, and it's gonna take a long time. And then there is this cheesy saying of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's something that Andreas mentioned. So maybe if you can find a way to gain speed and impact, then decouple, try to do it on your own, try to show success. And then I think you need to be integrated. You need to kind of get together. And that's like the part where it gets really intense when, like, I think it's easier to have fast success and show first success like individually. It's going to be like the hard job to integrate it with existing established system and like the people working there, because they do their job since 20, 30 years successfully. And this is like a marathon. That's not a sprint.
Yeah, I think there's some really important things you guys have said that I just want to underscore here. And it's, I mean, to me, this is like the big universal truths. You know, one way I heard it phrased is we need to scale from the lab, like the innovation lab, to the lob, the line of business. And I've seen this pattern in so many companies where they know that there's been some step change in technology or some paradigm shift in consumer behavior, and there's some vanity project that's done. I think about when mobile phones, like smartphones, came on, like everyone just had to have an app in the App Store, but it was basically a brochure for the traditional, you know, whatever kind of business. And to your point about this idea of you can't just have an island of misfit toys, super smart folks that don't have an executive mandate, that have no real budget to build things, to try to go around to line of business owners and get them to give you budget and authority over them, right? To do that creates this potential for tension. But I was just doing one of these conversations with a company that was shifting from a security service to security, kind of in home security as a fully integrated hardware software play. And when I asked him, you know, what is really the role of the transformation office, he really underscored what you guys said, that we're player coaches. We're not trying to go in to necessarily be smarter than these other teams, but we're trying to activate a new set of activities and a way of thinking of working that maintain the sense of urgency. I think what you guys are adding here is connecting that to, like, this is the future of the core business. And that urgency, to your point, that you said, it aligns to the car. It aligns to the future of the core business and how we align that. So if we have that alignment, then we're not just showing the art of the possible with technologies to business line owners that have real P&L responsibility. We're actually showing the path, at least the method to the path of finding where this all comes together, right? In the product market fit or the service, you know, new line, but pulling that together. And I think those kind of themes, I think, get to maybe the last issue that I'd really, or area of question I have for you guys. So you're really getting to this place of culture, right? Like the future of work. What does it mean to be on a team, and what is our culture? And this is high performing, and this is a new kind of mode of thinking and working that is not a tenure based. If I'm an engineer in this team for 5 years, I'll be a project manager in 10, kind of a thing. And not everyone's even used to working in that way, you know. And I'm just curious, kind of your guys' experience on all these elements come together, and when it works, it almost feels like it's effortless and magic, and the culture kind of feeds itself. But what are your guys' kind of takeaways on the working cadence, the culture, you know, and even, I guess, if there is a COVID hybrid, kind of what does this mean? How did that affect things? But I'd love to get some of your guys' thoughts and experiences on the team dynamic itself.
It's interesting, and it's an interesting part what you're saying is because on the other side, we found 5 years ago, so it was 2 or 3 years before COVID started. We found out that there was really one very, let's say, underdeveloped piece in our company was the culture piece. So let's say the people business, the real people business, because we were facing having new people on board, which come from a generation which is different from where I was growing up. So I was different. I was thinking different. I was thinking more traditional. I was thinking of having the traditional leadership development and all sort of things. So a different kind of I would say values So my values have been different, and this changed a lot 5 years ago when we started to develop our company culture. Completely new. We destroyed everything. We said, forget the hierarchies, forget the way we working. It was a hard journey for us, to be quite honest. So when we did it, the journey afterwards was long. But basically, we said we have to empower people, we have to empower teams. We have to give power to the teams. We have to give responsibility to the teams. We have to work in networks, not in departments. And in my opinion, this is something which is now absolutely mandatory to have that. Otherwise, people will not join because their purpose is different. And they will find only their purpose to be somehow fulfilled when they find an environment where they have people who are driving in the same direction, so to speak. So they have similar values. They have similar ideas how progress look like, how they would like to work together. It is not something which is always fixed and we have a big process there. It is more flexible. It gives, obviously, power to the people, but also it creates demands. So there is an expectation to people. And this is good, really good, because people are not stupid. They need challenges. They need problems to solve. They want to be challenged. They are not robots or whatever, people who are not able to think. And this is a completely different way, and people expect that. And I'm very happy that on the other side, we made that first steps. And as I mentioned, it was hard because a lot of things on the road failed, but basically the core itself stayed. And this is good. So we have now teams who have the responsibility to organize themselves, and they have the freedom to decide how they solve problems. And this is good, in my opinion. And this is a critical piece which brought us over COVID. And COVID is, in my opinion, really a disaster in terms of having people together, because teams were not able to see each other. It's now a little bit better, but basically there is a lack of 2 years, and this destroyed a lot of cultural elements. But the base and the core is there, and we have to, let's say, reactivate that. Otherwise, it will fall inside themselves. So it will be smaller, and then sometimes it disappears and the culture is not there anymore. And this is very important, in my opinion.
I just love to listen to you, Andreas, because that's totally true. I would say, and that's nothing new. A lot of people say you need to be agile, and a lot of people say no, don't be agile. Just try to bust the silos and just try to connect people. And that's what you said, Andreas, to have like this kind of networking. And I think there's a really thin line between like having people that are just like networking and tearing down walls and being focused on getting work done. And that's something I realized that it's not only depending on the role, and there is no universal answer to it, but like some people, they have the urge to network and to connect others, and others don't. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a role that is focused on networking and spreading information. Could be also someone where you don't think the role can actually do this like in a good way. Maybe we think of engineers doing just focused coding work, but also there could be engineers who are good in connecting, spreading information. And maybe there are POs and product managers that are better in just spreading the vision, and others are better than actually focusing on detailed product roadmap insights, providing them to teams. So I think it's super important to try as a leader to try to maximize the impact of the individuals. So to help them to find their best playground, how they can actually feel impact and contribute to the team success. And that's not just you have a role, you need to do it. It's more like what's the human behind the role, and how can we bring the best people together and give them the chance to actually do whatever they can do best, and how can they feel their impact.
I think, the first time I met you guys and saw the Abinauts laptop stickers, this kind of consciousness, right, of the persona. is such a powerful cultural artifact, right? And again, it's something you just cannot manufacture in an employee handbook with a set of rules. It's a living, breathing thing. You know, is there an origin story on that? Maybe do you want to just kind of explain that kind of briefly for folks that might not be aware of that team's moniker that you have, Flo?
I mean, I can't say like what's the origin of the Abinaut, but of course, as Abi, as this is our like the abbreviation of our company, it just makes sense to have like a role model for it. And our mothership, they use another term, and we actually wanted to have something different because we are different, and we wanna line that out. And what we just found out on the way is that we want to have like something that everyone understands super easily. I mean, you can spread brochures with values and principles and all the stuff, but it's just better to say, hey, look at this. I mean, we wanna be like this. This is our role model, and you can actually have some really short statements that just like tell everything you need to know. Like this is like what defines us. And of course I wanted to have some logo to just create swag as shirts or stickers.
It sets the explorer mindset, right? I mean, it kind of encapsulates so many complex things, right? That are alignment, that, you know, be comfortable with uncertainty, right? This kind of work is, you manage uncertainty, to your point about product roadmaps, different than certainty, project backlogs, right? And I think, you know, there's a lot more to be said on this topic. I could do probably a whole nother interview with just on this, but I think this is a great place to maybe leave our conversation for today and just kind of maybe dive in a little bit more to it. But I feel like, especially given your comment, Andreas, around, you know, it's been so hard in lock. It's one thing to have distributed teams. It's another thing to try to function a culture in a lockdown. And when I think about cultures for these kind of teams at their best, culture supports the work itself, right? So having these cultural artifacts and this kind of reason for being, it almost doesn't matter. Like I used to think, you know, some of the best companies supporting open source technologies had nothing to do with those technologies. Like the founder of PHP works at Pinterest. I bet you some of the best PHP developers in the world work at Pinterest, not because they care about the business model of Pinterest, but because they know that that company is active and visible and relevant in things that matter to them as a technologist. Yeah. And I hear those same themes coming out of what you guys are describing, right? There's a mindset that we all want to share with real outcomes and goals that are our shared goals and values. And we don't have to be very prescriptive in some cases about the white space of how you get this done versus another team get this done. But tying those two things together and having that is kind of the value proposition that you're offering, it seems to be such a differentiator. And it sounds like that's what you guys are saying. Are there any just other things we haven't kind of talked about as it relates to that component of your building high performing teams that it's just something that you would share to folks? And then any kind of parting, you know, any kind of thoughts you guys have as we kind of wrap up our time here?
I think we had a statement, a great product is never done. And that's the same with an organization. It's just never done because, I mean, the people change, the needs of the people change, the zeitgeist, we say, is changing. So I think that's a never changing, it's an always changing process. And I think you need to be aware of that. There is no answer how to handle it. Besides, be conscious, be aware, try to support the people, try to find out what they need.
But basically what you're saying, Flo, is pretty awesome because, and you mentioned it, also the people business is a product. So when the customer is the one who is working on our company, external or internal, it doesn't really matter, on our products. So it is something which we should as a company do to develop the best environments that people can grow. And the Abinaut is just a small symbol, but it's really a really reflecting symbol. The rest, which is also developed on our side, we have processes there. So all these sort of things are in place, but never over-engineer them. So the user experience of a company, so to speak, has also been somehow developed. It's not just a given fact and you have to put in HR people there and then it's working. No, it's a product. And the user experience from the employee perspective should also be considered. And then we will have a successful company having people. So it's really the inside view, how they work, how they interact, how the principles are, how the values are. And then you have the outside world. So the topics which are working on, the projects, the products, and all these sort of things. There must be a balance. So great people attract great people. And when I look into my, let's say, past, I found projects. I was a project manager, so that's why I'm saying I'm a dinosaur. And whatever comes in mind when I reflect having, let's say, a great project there was always people. It was never that it was really a great project. It has been great people sitting together and working and finding solutions. And this we have to always keep in mind. People are the best asset that we have, and we should treat them as a customer.
I think that's a great place to leave it, Andreas. I mean, again, for all the complexities of trying to execute this kind of program at that kind of scale, treating your own business like a product and the customer is the people is just a huge, powerful kind of Occam's razor, right, on how to get all these things done. So gentlemen, listen, thank you again for your time. It sounds like some really fascinating things going on within ABI. And I'd love to pick up this conversation in a year and see where things are then. But thank you again for your time today.
Great. Thanks for having us.